For today's read aloud, I have a nonfiction story called Frogs by Gail Gibbons. Does anybody remember what nonfiction means? Nonfiction means it's true. It's a book of facts. It's springtime at the pond. A breeze ripples the surface. The floating clump of eggs is called frog spawn. Frogs lay their eggs in the water or wet places. Otherwise, the eggs could dry up and die. Have you ever seen that in the water on a pond? I know I have, and sometimes they go on my pool over the winter, the pool cover, and I'll get these little eggs from frogs and toads. These eggs do not have shells. Let's see if I can get it so you can see it better. They are inside jelly-like coverings. As they float, the jelly lets the sun's warmth come through to the eggs inside. Not all the eggs will survive. Most of the time, the large and slimy mass of eggs is too slippery and too big to be eaten. This is nature's way of protecting them. But some of the smaller clusters of eggs will be eaten by creatures living in or near the pond. The dark centers of the eggs slowly grow into frog embryos. The embryos grow until they look like small tadpoles. Tadpoles are frog babies. As they grow, they feed off their own yolks. See the frog babies, the little tadpoles? Here's some on this page too. The tadpoles grow until they are big enough to break free into the water. It can take them 3 days to 3 weeks for this to happen, depending on what type of frog. One by one, the tadpoles hatch from their eggs. They each have a head, tail, and a body. The tadpoles wiggle their tails to swim. The tadpoles breathe by getting air from the water through feathery outside gills, just like a fish. As they swim, they eat very small plants that stick to large water plants. These tiny plants are called algae. See the little tadpoles? I bet some of you have seen tadpoles in the pond. One week later, tadpoles look different. They are bigger, their gills begin to shrink. A flap of skin slowly grows over them. The tadpoles' mouths become hard with tiny teeth in their upper jaws. Now the tadpoles are 1 month old. Their outside gills have disappeared. New gills inside the tadpoles take oxygen from the water. Their tails are wider and stronger for swimming. Something wonderful begins to happen. At the base of their tail, bulges appear. This is where their hind legs start to grow. At 2 months old, the tadpoles dart about the pond as they eat. They are still vegetarians. Vegetarians only eat plant life. The tadpole gets bigger. Now they have hind legs between their head. Bulges appear where their front legs start growing. Look at the legs. Can you see them? And they're going to get little front legs soon. The tails become smaller. The tadpoles' gills inside their bodies are gone. They have grown lungs to use for breathing. Now and then they will wiggle to the surface and breathe the air. The tadpoles are about 3 months old. Again, they look different. They have front legs. Their tails are even smaller. They have shed their tadpole skin and lips. At last, they have wide mouths like frogs. The tadpoles have become very tiny frogs. They climb out of the pond and onto the land. Their tails will become smaller and smaller until they finally disappear. The tiny vegetarian the tiny frogs begin to eat insects and worms. They aren't vegetarians anymore. Frogs are amphibians. The word amphibian comes from a Greek word that means two lives. An amphibian can live on land or in the water. Frogs are cold-blooded. That means their inside body temperature are about the same as the outside temperature. During the next few years, the tiny frogs will grow to be mature frogs. Then they will be able to make their own frog spawn, and there will be new baby frogs. And here's the body parts of a frog. Look at that big, long, sticky tongue. Frogs don't hunt for food. Their big eyes are on top of their heads, so they can see all the way around. They stay very still. When something flies or crawls nearby, their long, sticky tongue darts out and catches it. They swallow their food whole. Frogs that swim use their powerful hind legs and webbed feet to push them through the water. Frogs have two sets of eyelids. One set is transparent, so they can see through them. Those are kind of like goggles. When frogs dive, they close these eyelids to protect their eyes. On land, the frog hops about. They use their very strong hind legs to leap. Most frogs can jump 10 times their body length. They are wonderful jumpers. Frogs do have enemies. Foxes, snakes, rats, birds, and other creatures eat frogs when they can catch them. A sudden leap is a quick escape from danger for protection. Some frogs have skin glands that make them taste bad or make them poisonous. Sometimes their skin color hides them from any enemies. This is called camouflage. I bet some of you like to wear camouflage. Croak. Frogs make different sounds. Often male frogs call in the female frogs. They pull in the air sacs through their throats. The air sacs expand to look like bubbles. When the frog forces these air sacs out into their lungs, it passes over their vocal cords and vibrates. They make different calls that mean different things. Some frogs are very loud. Ooh, look at these guys in the wintertime. Do you see them? Where it is cold in the winter, the frogs can go to sleep. Sometimes they find shelter, hollows. Often frogs dig into the muddy bottom of a pond. All winter they sleep, covered with mud. They stay completely motionless. This is called hibernation, just like bears. But bears find a place to sleep like a cave or a den. In the springtime, when the sun begins to warm up the ground and pond water, the frogs come out of hibernation. They are healthy and hungry. People who know a lot about frogs are called herpetologists. They spend lots of time watching and waiting to learn more about these animals. Experts tell us there are more than 3,800 different kinds of frogs. Frogs play an important role in the balance of nature. They keep insects under control by eating so many of them. Also, frogs are food for other animals. Frogs are many different sizes, shapes, colors. It is fun to learn about them. You can be a frog expert too. Then here's a frog. What's the difference? And look at the toad. Frogs, one of the biggest differences you can tell, have really smooth, kind of wetter skin, bigger, larger eyes, where toads spend more of the time on drier land, and their skin is dry and bumpy. That was called frogs. I hope you learned a thing or two about frogs. I know they're one of my favorite animals. I love going to the pond and visiting and seeing all the little frogs jump in. All right, boys and girls, have a wonderful day. Ribbit.